Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the renewed CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. I am your host, Kurt Wuckert Jr., broadcasting live from sunny South Florida. Just realized this is what I get from holding the kids when I'm wearing a black shirt. I get little like lip marks from yogurt and stuff. So everybody, welcome back to the to regularly scheduled programming. I don't think we've done a show since October. God, I didn't even know, something in the 20s. So it's been like 7 weeks since we've done a regular show due to the Kleiman Right special coverage. So thank you, everybody. I have received an immense amount of praise and shout outs and everything. Thank yous from everybody just for doing all the coverage. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it myself. And but I am very, very glad to be back. And as you can see, I am in a shiny new black box that is my new permanent studio. It's not quite done yet. We still got to put up some more foam and some stuff around here. But the studio and the move and everything else, I am so glad it's over. I am finally in my final resting place. That's the absolute worst way to say it. So Andrew, I see some comments coming up here. Where can I get the Kurt shirt? This is actually a custom one of a kind. I made this myself many moons ago. It is an official Satoshi Vision shirt that I made all by myself because I do stuff like that. But if anybody wants to send t-shirts, so let's talk a little bit about sponsorships real quick. We got a bunch of good sponsors for the Kleiman Right stuff, but we expect more and more action here as more and more people begin to look at BSV and the power of BSV in the wake of the end of the Kleiman Right stuff. I'm so glad it's over. I'm so glad that we can get back to normal stuff. But if you want to advertise, you can talk to the delightful, the lovely Alex Moon, my executive producer, who also handles ads for the show, as well as most of the branding and marketing stuff, or he at least leads all the people. His crew of magic elves that handle the branding and marketing for everything that happens at CoinGeek.com. So please reach out to Alex Moon. If you want me to wear a special shirt on the air with your brand, I could do something like that. Or we can have digitally pasted art all over floating around my head. Just remember, the new background is black. So if you send a PNG, make sure it looks good on a black background because that's what it's going to look like for the foreseeable future. So if you haven't been paying attention, I want to talk a little bit about, let's not even do that. In a few minutes, I'm going to have Ty Everett from Project Babbage. Gave one of my favorite presentations at CoinGeek in New York this last time around, a few months ago. I guess that was October. Project Babbage is something I'm very excited about, but it's something that I also only kind of have a cursory and high-level understanding. I very purposely didn't do a ton of digging because I wanted to ask questions that would be relevant to the viewers and to people that are building tokens and stuff. He's also been so kind to have been a sponsor during the coverage. So you've gotten to see the Project Babbage ad that has floated around for 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. So thank you to Ty, and we'll have Ty on probably 2:10 or 2:15 after a couple of ads play. But so stay tuned for that. Get your questions ready for what the heck is Project Babbage or anything that you want to ask Ty, who is quite philosophical and has the Bitcoin spirit that always made me excited about Bitcoin from back in the day. So excited to have him. But let's talk a little bit about, before we go that direction, let's talk about what's going on in the space. So we have seen a couple of explosive big NFT drops, which is not something that was really happening in BSV 6 months ago, but all of a sudden we've got like the Gopniks on Relay X, and then we've got the Astro Apes on Rare Candy, and now the Oni are coming soon. And we've got an interesting protocol conversation to have because there is yet again another token protocol. The Twetch-based protocol is what it looks like is being used, in Rare Candy, but it is very, very nice looking. The MetaMask style browser extension wallet works really well. The experience is very, very nice, and super excited about that. But there is a this interoperability thing. So now we have run tokens, we have sensible tokens, we have STAS tokens, we've got tokenized tokens. And then we've got whatever these based apes or the Astro apes and the Oni are another token protocol, which really requires something like Project Babbage, as I understand that it works. So I'm sure we will be getting into exactly how to tie all this together and make it all make sense in a few minutes. I also wanted to talk a little bit. I see some like Gorilla DAO, Gorilla kind of questions coming up because there's been a question about the DAO and the pool and some of what's going on there. So the Gorilla pool was successfully bought by an investment group from the Gorilla DAO. So the Gorilla DAO is no longer the owner of the Gorilla pool, and the Gorilla pool will have a whole bunch of news coming up. I'm going to tell you ahead of all of the questions that are coming up about that the pool was not purchased by Calvin or some shell company that Calvin owns. Calvin is not going to control Gorilla Pool. I like Calvin. Calvin and I have a personal relationship a bit. He's like my boss's boss. But, so I obviously wish him well. But the pool is not going to be owned or controlled by Calvin in any regard. The pool is going to remain a completely independent pool, just run by professionals. And that's something that I'm very excited about. As for the DAO doesn't officially have a roadmap, unless you buy ape tokens, which I would encourage you, go ahead and do, and then use those ape tokens to vote for proposals, create proposals to create the DAO roadmap. This is something I've actually been asking as a very active member of the DAO since its inception. I have asked people, hey, we need like an accountant and we need to have a legally registered entity somewhere so that we can have a bank account, so that we can do things other than just goof around with money button and do other stuff like pay for NFTs and whatever. All things that are generally good, but really it needs to be run properly. This is actually what precipitated the move of the Gorilla pool away from the Gorilla DAO, is that the pool is really operating as a commercial entity, but didn't have a commercial entity because it was leaning on the DAO. But the DAO wasn't doing and when I say the DAO, I mean truly the members of the DAO were not setting it up in such a way for it to function as a business. And so as somebody that was helping operate the pool, I looked at it and said, hey, like we've got revenue, we've got expenses, we've got other things. Like we really need some help here. We need some people to step up and make that happen. And people were a little bit like, I don't know if I want to make it my responsibility. And this is actually what DAOs tend to do. Unless they're very specific. So a DAO can be like, hey, we should all invest in one thing and make a profit, and it gets spread out across the DAO. The Gorilla DAO is a very general purpose DAO, which kind of led people to be a little bit like, I'm going to be pretty passive. I'm going to let other people handle everything. And then ultimately it was the true problem with democracy, frankly, that people vote or they don't vote and they become lazy. And then there's just a handful of people that end up doing things. And then people only show up at election time to complain and whatever else happens there. So Stein Ludvigsen, how you doing, friend? Asking, is a DAO a regular company but without a CEO? Not really. The state of Wyoming represents the DAO, or they recognize rather the DAO management structure. It's more like a civic organization that's operated kind of like a corporation. So every member has an equal vote relative to their number of ape token holdings, but who's the CEO? I mean, ultimately everybody can vote. Like there can be a new CEO every week. And, it's this kind of chaos that we've seen in many DAOs. And ultimately we have also seen in Gorilla DAO where people aren't sure who's in charge. Is there a hierarchy? What is this nonsense? So I would encourage you, if you're an ape token holder and you feel like you want the DAO to do something special, or you want it to do maybe even just something more specific than it's doing now, make a damn proposal. Anyone can make a proposal. You only have to have one ape token and they're like $1. So get in the DAO, make a proposal about how the DAO should be run. And if it gets votes, that's how it will be run from then forward, and kind of is what it is. So I'm going to stop rambling. I'm really glad we're back doing live streams that are not climb and write live streams. We're going to go to an ad, and then we're going to return with Ty Everett. I'm going to ask him some questions, and then you can ask him some questions, and it's going to be delightful. So, Mr. Moon, please play the ad, and we will return with Ty Everett.
Our data is stored in the cloud, our connections and experiences constrained by a few large gatekeepers with unprecedented power. Our activity is analyzed by advertisers to exploit our need for attention, approval, and control. This is the world in which we live. But what if things could be different? What if you could pay for the videos you watch, the messages you send, the music you listen to, directly with Bitcoin? What if your identity, your data, your actions and accountability stayed with you across apps? And what if you only needed one password to log into every service you use? Slowly, as the full power of the Bitcoin protocol is being unleashed, Project Babbage is making these what-ifs into reality. Migrate your app from internet to metanet and join this new world. Build on Babbage at projectbabbage.com.
All right, welcome back. Ty, it is a delight to have you. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I've had a lot of people ask, they've been like, hey, who's this new guy? And I've had to say, you know what? Ty's been around for a little bit. He's just not, on Twitter all day, which I think is a bonus, frankly. Let's hear a little bit, like, what's your Bitcoin story? How'd you get into Bitcoin? And then we can go from there.
Well, I would say it was the end of 2016, and I remember telling my mom like how excited I was that the Bitcoin price had finally gone up above, I think it was $1,000 at the time. Very early 2017, I started to look into things, and it really just went from there. I wasn't fully immersed in the whole community during the initial Bitcoin BTC versus Bitcoin BCH, split in August 2017, where we split off from all of these people who believe that Bitcoin should run in this very small block universe. And as time went on, though, I started to get better as a programmer, and I decided this is what I want to contribute to, and so I started building some tools and some things in that space, and followed the BSV people over to where we are now. And it was the beginning of 2020 when I finally started working on my new project.
Incredible. So you're a medium, not an old guard guy, but a medium guard guy.
Right.
So it's fine by me. 2016 is is still early in many regards. So what attracted you to it? Are you for some people it was like, oh, as soon as I understood proof of work, I was all in on Bitcoin. Or what was the thing that sealed the deal for you that made you interested?
I mean, it really pulled me in and then educated me. Originally, I was one of those people that was like, we can build this immutable, unbreakable, unstoppable, fully decentralized thing and all of this stuff. But what happened is, as I read more into that, like, of course, that's an ideal, right? But as I read more into it, I was like, and the best way to do that is to introduce law and systems of making sure that things don't go off the rails, and introduce all of these things that we already have almost. And so it's weird the way in which that works. But I was brought in by the idea that people could, like, micropayments was a really big thing. It was this idea that I could create something that other people thought was valuable. And then and for a long time, I remember like going around and talking to people about this idea. It was like, well, what if I could write out an article, and then people who have read that article could send a micropayment to me as the author, and then the next micropayment would go to not only me as the author, but also the people that have tipped me previously, right? And like that was one of my first like micropayment incentive schemes, and yep. From there it was like, this is the only way of doing that, and it needs to be acceptable to the public. It needs to be it needs to work. It needs to be kind of in line with what people really value, in order to enable people to have this new tool of kind of financial empowerment. That's kind of one of the things, but also because of the nature of this being crypto, well, it's not cryptocurrency. It uses cryptographic algorithms to enable all of this stuff. And so because of that, it's also very friendly and kind of conducive to digital privacy. And digital privacy is something I really care about as well. So,
for sure.
I mean, those are kind of the things that brought me in, and Bitcoin educated, Bitcoin really educated me. It forced me to understand economics and the need for law and all of this stuff. And I don't really see other technologies like bringing people up and actually the more you learn about it, the more you learn about the world, and the more you learn about how to how to kind of contribute in the best way. And so that's why I like Bitcoin, and that's why I kind of think it's a valuable thing.
That's awesome. Killer answer. So we got HV asking, what can we actually do with Babbage? I don't want to start there. I'd actually like to start with like, can you give us like the 2-minute version of what the heck is Project Babbage in your own words?
I would say Project Babbage is a framework for building Bitcoin apps. That's like the one line thing. And there's a lot that goes into that, because when we're building apps on Bitcoin, the way that I define that is an app built on Bitcoin is an app that can be derived where the state of the application, the things that people have done, the actions they've taken, as well as the data associated with that, can be derived from that which exists on the blockchain. And so that means that things need to be written to the blockchain. Protocols need to be defined by which you can have data on the blockchain that is readable and kind of compatible across different implementations of a protocol. And so there's a lot of tools and developer oriented things that are being built in order to enable that. But the main idea, I think the best place to start would be to kind of talk about the main idea of like, why do we need to have things built on Bitcoin? And one of those is definitely going to be the current data silo model, where users have they have 10 different accounts or 20 different accounts, and they have all these different passwords, and they have to deal with so much overhead as they're going about their lives on the internet. I don't think people really like that. And so if apps were able to kind of log into people, then instead of people having to log into all their apps, then the data could be owned by the individual instead of by all of these platforms. And when you incorporate micropayments as a better economic incentive around that, you can provide a significant reason for the apps themselves to migrate over to this model, because now they actually have the ability to do what people wanted to do back in the 90s when the internet started to get really big, which was pay per use, right? Micropayments for when you watch a video, when you listen to a song, when you interact with the world, you take actions, and those actions are Bitcoin transactions, where small amounts of value is conveyed between the people involved, the app platform itself, but also the artist or the person who you're interacting with, right? So you like a video, or you write a comment. If you're going to, there's ways of mitigating spam and stopping things like all these robocalls that always happen. In fact, I had to remember to put my phone on silent before this stream started, because chances are I'm probably going to get a few robocalls during this 1 hour period.
For sure.
So, I mean, there's so many things that can be solved by Bitcoin and its better economic properties, but also the efficiency properties of like, these are things that people have done, and we can log those, and then we can go back and look at them and represent them in the best way to provide users the best experience. And so Babbage is a set of tools and I guess frameworks for making that happen. And there's many different components of it that are geared towards app developers who don't need to focus on all of the Bitcoin stuff. They can focus on kind of making their app work the best way. And that's kind of what we're doing at a high level.
So what are the infrastructure requirements for Project Babbage? Is this running on a separate set of servers? Like I know some people criticize things like Run as a token protocol, because Run requires some of its own infrastructure. And then it's like, well, why aren't we just using Bitcoin? Does Babbage have a similar concept, or how is it bootstrapped, and how is it connected to the Bitcoin network?
Well, there's a component of Babbage called Bridgeport. And so essentially, the way that I usually introduce Bridgeport is apps have two, if you think about and this applies to internet apps as well as meta-internet apps, but apps really have two mandates. The first mandate is to interpret the intent of what the users want, and to make those intentions into, basically to translate those intentions into programming code that allows the user to, press a button in order to create an account or whatever, right? So that's the first thing, is they have to interpret the intent of users into a set of actions, so to speak, which are the things that the user has done, and then track those, right? The second thing is to take all of the actions taken by, the current user as well as other users of the same application, and to then represent that and represent the past things that a person has done into a good user experience. So if we make all actions into Bitcoin transactions, then what you can do is you can run, because Bitcoin keeps everything in the right order. It's got integrity, it's got immutability, so that the actions that people have taken are kind of well defined in terms of when they're put onto Bitcoin as Bitcoin transactions, as well as kind of the order in which they appear. That's kind of inherent to the properties of Bitcoin. So what you can do is you can bootstrap up sets or collections of actions from Bitcoin, and use those inside of databases and data sets, I guess I should say, that are deterministically derived from what is on Bitcoin. And so Bridgeport provides a framework by which users can take actions, and then app developers get to write these things called bridges, which take all of the actions that users have taken that are kind of a certain category. For example, all actions where a user said, I would like my preferred font to be X, right? They all kind of follow the I don't know, user font protocol or something. So if I want all my emails to be Comic Sans, I could make an expression of preference and have that happen.
Sure.
You can take those inside of a thing called Bridgeport, and you can make those into kind of derived data sets from Bitcoin. And so using Bitcoin as the ledger enables us to derive higher order systems from it by the use of fixed protocols that are defined on top of it. And then anybody can spin up. So maybe I run a Bridgeport server that derives its state from the blockchain, but so suppose I have an open protocol that everybody knows about, right? Like this is the type of data that fits into this protocol. Now, somebody else can also run a Bridgeport server. And that means that if I'm running a protocol and I'm following, all of the latest Bitcoin transactions, and I'm deriving them into the database in the way as prescribed by that particular protocol, somebody else can be doing the same thing, and they can be checking to make sure that my server is doing what it should. And so Bitcoin kind of provides the underlying honesty layer, and then the infrastructure, all it has to do is follow the rules of the particular protocol that it claims to be running. And we kind of move away from the idea that the server is the authoritative source of information. And now the server is only an agent of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is an agent of the user, or the people who are participating in the protocol.
Sure.
And so you can interact with servers. Yes, they're centralized, whatever. But if there's two Bridgeport servers and they're both running the same bridge at the same time, it doesn't matter as a user which one I'm talking to, because they're both following the same rules. They're both looking at the same sets of transactions on the blockchain. And so I, as a user, no longer need to talk to a single server. I can talk to I can speak a certain protocol, and then servers can fulfill answers to my queries. So if I am for example, there's an application called Convo Messenger. That's an example application. Mm-hmm. So I, as a user, I could go to the Babbage, the Babbage run Bridgeport server and say, give me my last 10 messages. But I could also go to somebody else's Bridgeport server and say the same thing. And both of those servers are going to provide the same response. And just like how users can query SPV nodes, or they can query until they're satisfied they have the longest chain of block headers using the SPV model. In this case, they can also query any servers that are hosting the protocol they're trying to access until they're satisfied they have a response that is adequately and honestly derived from what is on Bitcoin. And so The infrastructure requirements are kind of localized to my particular instance of a Bridgeport server. But what I've really defined and the true value add here is the framework of incentives by which that is orchestrated. And so it's a method by which people can create systems derived from Bitcoin and then make money when they honestly follow protocols they claim to follow.
Right.
And so Bridgeport is the thing that underpins by tracking the state of certain sets of actions that have been taken. So I, as a user, take an action to send a message to Convo Messenger.
So how do you mentioned making money, this is something that I push on every app or protocol developer, like actually, especially with protocol developers. So you get guys that come up with a protocol and they're like, hey, this is going to solve everything. And I always have to ask, okay, well, how do you make money so that when you're bored in 18 months that you don't just let the protocol die on the vine? Right. So Ty, how do you make money on this?
I make money by app developers who make MetaNet apps. They want a place, they don't want to spin up all of the infrastructure required to track actions from the blockchain. So they take, if I'm building, I don't know, a photo sharing app, my users are going to post their photos, maybe not directly on chain, but they're going to create transactions which reference photos. And my app needs to be aware of the actions taken by not only my users, but other users who are following the same protocol, so that my photo sharing app can provide the state to users that the users need in order to sort of view the photo sharing app the way that they based on the things they've done. So the photo sharing app needs to know about the actions that have been taken by users of that app and also users of that protocol. So that photo sharing app can come to me as the person running the Babbage, Bridgeport server, and pay me to run the bridge that tracks that particular subset of the blockchain, those particular actions, and puts them into a database in a deterministic way. Now, I can make money by agreeing to host that particular thing. And my reputation as the Babbage Bridgeport server is tied to it's tied to a key that broadcasts, I hereby commit to hosting this bridge with this bridge ID at this URL for this length of time. And any other Bridgeport bridge any other server can do that same thing and stake their reputation on what they're hosting and its reliability. And so I am one of the people that can make money from this. Now, if people don't trust me, they could spin up another server and do the same thing. Sure. And that would actually improve the value of the system, because now there's more than one party, and I'm not the one that everybody has to rely on. And the more participants there are running Bridgeport nodes, the higher the value of the system is.
Seems like an opportunity for like a mining operation. So if you were to approach like Tal or Gorilla Pool or anybody else, and they would say, yeah, we support Project Babbage and we're running it, right next to our UTXO set, and ta-da. Is that something like you expect them to do that? Or is this something you got to do a little bit of sales calls and stuff on your end? Say, hey guys, please run Project Babbage servers so we can have some data persistence.
I think that over time, there's going to develop a market for that sort of thing. I mean, it might be like AWS, where they had kind of the first, they had 5 years of just, they were the only ones doing this. And eventually people figured out, hey, wait a second, we can make Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud or whatever the competitors to them, to AWS were at the beginning. And I think that is going to be part of what happens. But I also do think that proactive members of the Bitcoin SV's ecosystem might look into how to host Bridgeport bridges. And not every Bridgeport node, of course, has to host every view of Bitcoin, because a Bridgeport bridge is just a way of looking at Bitcoin. And it's usually a way of looking at a very small subset of Bitcoin. So only photos shared using this photo sharing protocol, only messages sent using this message sending protocol, for example. Sure. And so different people are going to specialize in different ways of looking at Bitcoin and providing different services to different applications and use cases derived from Bitcoin. And so I mean, my Bridgeport bridge my Bridgeport node is the first, but I don't even run a Bitcoin full node to support it underneath because of the fact that, I mean, I only need a very small subset of Bitcoin, and users submit to me, transactions and things like that.
So as I understand it, this is like Project Babbage is what would classically be called an overlay network, which is something that people have talked about in Bitcoin quite a bit, and some of Unwriter's tools would also be classified as an overlay network, but we haven't seen Unwriter in about a year and a half now.
Right.
Is that the gap you're trying to fill? Was it like, hey, Unwriter had good ideas and he's gone, and I'm gonna take the reins a little bit, or what was your inspiration to go this direction?
Unwriter left the space. It seems maybe he's still here in stealth. I don't know. And he was doing some really cool things originally with the old Planaria ideas, not the new, Bitbus and Bitsocket, which those are great tools, but the original idea that, you could have these state machines, they're called, running on the finite state machines, running on top of Bitcoin, and using Bitcoin as kind of the motor or the underlying thing that drove everything.
Yeah.
When I read that documentation for the first time, I was so captivated by it. I was like, this is the answer. This makes sense.
I was too. The first time I read about Unwriter's first couple of things, I was like, oh my God, this is big news.
And so, yeah, I took a lot of inspiration from that. In fact, some of the tools that I have worked on are derived from Unwriter's set of tools. I mean, he licensed a lot of things MIT, but they seem to have been abandoned at this point, unfortunately. And I just didn't want to let those ideas die. And so, in addition to some of the Unwriter tools, I mean, I think there's also other components though that I've kind of built alongside that. One of those is a client-side piece of software called Babbage Desktop. So if you want to use apps that leverage Project Babbage, your app doesn't have to be a wallet. It doesn't have to manage private keys and deal with address reuse. It doesn't have to deal with all these complicated things, because you can just use and you can do that if you only want to use the Bridgeport component of Project Babbage, and perhaps NanoStore for your multimedia content, photos, videos, things like that in an on-chain application.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to be your own wallet, you can use the Babbage Desktop and eventually Babbage Mobile to enable enable your users to take actions in the particular application that you're creating, as well as to encrypt and decrypt data with a multitude of different keys. So it's not like some of these other platforms that exist where you only have one or two keys you can use to encrypt, decrypt, or sign, create signatures on things. You have entire universes of keys under the BIP32, the tree structure. So you can define permission, or sorry, you can grant permission for your application to leverage those keys, and developers have a lot more power to create more customized Bitcoin transactions. So, for example, Bitcoin transactions that redeem custom inputs or that use different SIG hash flags, various types of outputs with any custom script, any custom amount, as well as eventually we're going to enable interim states like payment channel type things inside of transactions. And so we're providing an entire vertically integrated stack of tools that that developers can use to not only have the client key management stuff solved, but also multimedia content inside their applications and state management on top of Bitcoin, and all with a micropayment model. And each of those I have ways of earning revenue from. So for example, the content storage thing called NanoStore, where you can put multimedia content, videos, VR objects in the metaverse, whatever. You can have those stored, and I basically just take money for running a storage server that stores those and then makes them available on a very widespread content delivery network. And So that's one. And then, of course, the Babbage desktop software. So users take actions in Babbage desktop, and what happens, or I should say, users take actions using whatever software they have, because it could be Babbage desktop, it could be Babbage mobile, and eventually, when this gets big enough, it's an open protocol, like the user management protocol that says this is an account that you have, and these are your keys and everything. That particular protocol is open. So like Babbage could be the Google Chrome of the new MetaNet, but someone else could be the Firefox or the Internet Explorer, or whatever else.
Interesting. No, that's fascinating. Well, and it's fascinating because I think one of the things with Unwriter, for example, and I don't want to just compare you to him a bunch of times, and because I don't think that's exactly fair either. But ultimately, I think Unwriter inspired a lot of people to build a lot of application level stuff and say, "Oh, I'm going to build an app on Bitcoin using whatever the tool." And but I think his problem was that he had to spin up a bunch of full nodes because he was doing a lot of the indexing and then offering endpoints for people to utilize. But it seems like this is a little more like open protocol stuff where people don't necessarily have to lean on your infrastructure in a way that's going to cost you.
Precisely.
But it actually solves a bunch of these problems, like I mentioned earlier. And I could see you giving me a yes nod when I said, like, hey, we have too many token protocols that aren't interoperating. So I'd love to talk about, if I'm a run token and I want to do work with a sensible token or a stas token or whatever, how does Project Babbage allow me to do that?
Well, Bridgeport defines a framework by which you can basically, what you can do with Bridgeport is you can say, look, these are the Bitcoin transactions that I care about. And then here is a function that takes these types of Bitcoin transactions, translates them into database commands that derive a database from the set of transactions which you have defined. And then you can write an API that is read-only against that database and serves that data out to the world. And that's the model. That's the methodology by which you can derive state from the blockchain, put it into a database, and then show it to the world. It's very similar to the old, for those who have been around long enough, the old planaria model of doing something similar. And what you can do with multiple token protocols is normalize them. So you're running a Bridgeport bridge, which knows about and takes into account in its stateful database that is derived entirely from the chain and completely deterministic, so anybody can spin up a copy and audit. It knows about sensible or stas or run or all three of them, and you can write you can do anything you can do with a very open-ended database database platform like MongoDB. And then you can write an application that basically says, okay, based on the state of these two tokens at this particular time, this is what the state of the higher order system is. And so any system that pulls together all of these protocols necessarily needs to be on a higher layer or a higher order, so to speak, than the underlying protocols themselves. Sure. So it has to be a superset of run, a superset of stas. But because all it's doing is reading the data from the chain and deriving state from it in a deterministic and auditable way, and also scalable. Because keep in mind that if there's 10 people running the same server, running the same bridge, like a user could talk to the one that is closest to them on the network, right? Or whatever. So you have almost I don't want to say, well, it's very scalable because of that. It doesn't matter which one you're talking to. So it's like load balancing almost for the read requests. And then, of course, the write requests are only transactions that go on Bitcoin. So those are very scalable, as we know, with the things that like Steve has demonstrated with Terranode. Sure. Yep. So those protocols can be pulled together into a single bridge that knows about and accounts for all of them, and it's just a matter of writing of creating a method by which you can read from Bitcoin, right? So to define a system by which you're reading from Bitcoin and taking into account the various states of the various protocols, and then deriving a higher order system from it, and then you can reap benefits of token platforms, and everybody says like, well, this is just a centralized like crawler or I guess overlay on top.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we look at the back to Genesis problem with these tokens.
Yep.
But really, I mean, the miners are just people who operate using these same incentives. So what I've done is taken the incentives that apply to Bitcoin miners and you talk to miners and ask about the longest chain of block headers until you're satisfied with the results. Well, the same type of thing can apply to these Bridgeport nodes as well. And I think that with that set of incentives, it's really economic security that you get out of that.
Right. Absolutely. All right, let's take some audience questions. I see a lot of good ones scrolling by. So Mikole Davidovsky, I think I'm right with how that's pronounced, basically. But how Project Babbage filters transactions for a particular application? What is the back end?
So when when you make an application, you have to define a format for your transactions, obviously. So when you hit that send button on your screen, like the user is going to make a transaction, and that transaction is going to be in a specific format. So maybe it's op return, maybe it's a stateful UTXO that gets spent forward, whatever it is. You have a transaction that was just made. Now you need to, in order to sort of incorporate this new action into the state of the application, so that this user as well as other users can see it at the same time. And this can be done with live sockets as well. But in order to do that, you need to write a filter. So if you're familiar with like Bitbus, you can just write like a find query or something that just includes all of these types of transactions that follow your particular format. And then given that transaction, which comes through, and the Bridgeport node handles the finding of any relevant transactions and sending them through, and that just happens because users send them directly to all Bridgeport nodes. So just like how transactions are broadcast to all nodes on the Bitcoin network, transactions that comply with a particular bridge are broadcast to all Bridgeport nodes that host that particular bridge on the overlay. What happens is those transactions that you specify are compliant with your format that you've defined go into a bridge transformer. That's what it's called. The component is called bridge filter for filtering, and then bridge transformer for taking the incoming transaction and transforming it into a set of database commands that, based on the previous state of the current blockchain, as well as based on the new information learned by the incoming transaction, define an update to the state of the database that you have derived from chain. And then the bridge reader serves those the requests from users who want to read what is the current state to the clients who have taken actions and who are listening for new events, and that updates the live sockets inside of the application. So that's how you can kind of filter out. You just write a bridge filter. There's some good documentation on GitHub, and it talks about, you write a bridge filter, you write a bridge transformer, and then you write a bridge reader, and those three things work to derive the state of the data from the transaction that was made.
Perfect. So here's a question from Brandon Ward, and maybe I'll rephrase it a little bit. He says, how hard is it to get started on Project Babbage? But I would ask, what are the prerequisite skills that someone should have before they're using Project Babbage to like deploy an app? What is it like? What languages is it based in? What do you need to know to use Project Babbage to do something cool on Bitcoin?
So there's a short-term answer to that, and then there's a medium to long-term answer to that. The short-term answer is right now, because I'm the person that built this, and because I use JavaScript, you should know JavaScript. And I like React, but probably my tools can be used with Vue.js or Angular or any of those. But my packages are on NPM on the Node.js package manager, and my tools are on GitHub. The current Bridgeport node that I am running supports MongoDB, and in the medium term, I plan to support SQL as another derivable kind of database that you can pull from chain, and then eventually Neo4j after that. But But that's the short-term answer. The long-term answer is that because of the nature of the system and because it's an economic system with a set of incentives and protocols that enable compatibility between various systems, you can eventually create applications. And I'm going to have to do this with Babbage Mobile. I'm going to have to learn some Kotlin and Swift and whatever to get this working. But it's going to be a multi-language and very, very large ecosystems level kind of set of standards. And you can. There's going to be obviously Bitcoin script and knowledge about Bitcoin is going to be important, but in the long term, whatever people are using, I think there's going to be some tools and libraries that are going to support this.
Awesome. It's great. Here's a question from Brian Stockwell. Is Craig familiar with Project Babbage? And if yes, has he expressed thoughts on the project?
Craig, I don't know how much he has looked at it, but we have talked. In fact, we exchanged some messages just this last week on Slack, and I think that over time he probably will be more familiar with it. I sent him an original paper called Computing with Integrity, which talks about some of these on a very, very fundamental level. I wrote this paper in March of February of 2020. It was right before COVID when I wrote this, and I emailed that off to him, and he said he thought it was really cool, and that he said it's going to take a lot of work to make this happen, and he was right. He was, yes. And for Craig to say it's going to take a lot of work, I mean, I have to say that's notable, because a lot of work for Craig is different than a lot of work for most other people.
For sure.
So he has we've talked about it, and I think that he seems to take a positive view of it.
Very cool. From Ted Rivera. What's up, Ted? Is it easily integrated into existing platforms, say a profile interface, messaging and sharing interface, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, you can write components. And so there's a tool in JavaScript called Parapet that you can use to talk to a Bridgeport bridge. So if you have, the create action function or just some way of making Bitcoin transactions that follow a certain protocol and sending them off to Bridgeport, and then you can use Parapet inside of your existing web applications to talk to the Bridgeport bridges that you want to pull data from. So if you have a particular protocol for just like profile photos or whatever, I mean, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It's progressively integratable with the existing internet. And so, the Babbage SDK and the Babbage desktop software, which you run on a desktop computer, as well as eventually Babbage Mobile, will enable users to create Bitcoin transactions using one methodology. But to leverage the benefits of Bridgeport, you don't have to do that. Like, you could use Money Button, or you could use other methods of making Bitcoin transactions inside of applications, and then just track your state with Bridgeport, or vice versa. Like, if you already have a way of tracking state, you can make transactions using Babbage Desktop, and then track them using your existing methodology. So definitely.
Nice, very cool. From Bruce-Defer, I need developers for an idea I've envisioned for over a decade. My business partner has an active audience of 250,000 music producers on Instagram. I have the dream, branding, and 600 BSV, LOL. Where do I start?
Well, gosh, I hope that you can find success in making that happen. And it sounds like you could definitely use some of the Babbage tools, including NanoStore for content storage of on-chain audio, which can be encrypted. So you can have encrypted copies of audio, and then you can have the users buy the key and pay on a per play basis. So you listen to a song once and you pay for it once, or something like that. Right. And the money can go to the artists directly using, just put an output in the Bitcoin transaction that goes to the artist, and one for you and one for me if you want. And from there, I mean, right. you can make a successful business. But not only that, you'll have these artists registering their content on chain, and there will be a record of what they've done. And so even in the future, somebody could come along and write a bridge that incorporates that protocol and I mean, suddenly you have kind of a preservation and a historical record of what has been done, and I think that's an important thing too. So where you should start is go to YouTube and go to the Project Babbage playlist. So there's a playlist with, right now it's got, I believe, 5 videos. It's the Babbage tutorial series. And by the end of that, you'll have a working little message board where you can use a Bridgeport bridge to send messages and set your custom name. And from that, I mean, send me a message and we'll work it out. But follow the tutorial series on YouTube. Learn JavaScript. I used React and MongoDB, but after you do that, I mean, you'll be good to, I think you'll be able to use that existing kind of starter project that you've got after the tutorial to make it into what you want.
Yep. So to the Brucifer character, I talked to Ted Rivera, was one of the guys who asked a question before. Ted's a music industry guy, so you two should connect. But if you wanted to talk about like app development and stuff like that, you can send me a DM on Twitter or wherever. We can chat about getting you off the ground. But yeah, it sounds like you need a couple people to connect some dots and turn an idea into a business here. Ted's movies. I just got a private chat. Yeah, Ted is movies, but he's got music people too. I know he does. From a question from Dilip Patel. Can you actually earn BSV on Project Babbage or any other remuneration for data shared or used?
Yes, you can. So I have a video on YouTube called How to Earn Money from Bitcoin Apps. And so as the app developer, when people use your app to take actions, then you can actually set up I specially coded up a thing called commissions. And you can say on 1 in every 10 transactions, charge 1,000 Satoshis, or you could say on every transaction charge, 600 Satoshis or whatever. And so the cool thing about this is app developers actually compete on UX. They compete on sort of apps need to interpret the actions taken by users in the best way. And so what that means is if an app isn't interpreting the actions, and these actions are owned by users, not by app developers. If an app isn't doing a good job, somebody else can come along and write another Bridgeport bridge that takes those same exact things that users have done in the past and reinterprets them because the users own that data. And so as an app, I want people to use me because, number one, I think I have a good UI, so people are going to like to use my app.
Yeah.
But also people take actions, and those actions actually pay the particular app that is being used. It can be set up like that. And the app developer can make money with every action that a user takes using your app.
Sure. So I got 2 questions that I want to follow. I know Alex usually chooses the questions, but we've only got about 6 minutes left, and I want to hit these 2. So first one from Infobitism, Crypto Sol. Privacy is something that we have not yet really talked about in the Bitcoin network. Well, I disagree with that premise, but how does Project Babbage address privacy in a network where users are incentivized to be open about the protocol and data?
There's an encrypt function and a decrypt function inside of the Babbage SDK. And so you can use entire universes of keys using BIP32. You can say, I want my private message to this particular person to be encrypted using the primary key set key at m/2000/3/9/ whatever. And the point is, the protocol can define how things are encrypted, and users can create encrypted content, put that on NanoStore, and then sell the key to other users, or they can put encrypted content directly on chain, and you can use elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman to exchange encrypted content between parties. It's all integrated in there. So check out the encrypt and decrypt functionality of the Babbage SDK, and you can create things that only the authorized people involved can actually access.
Beautiful. Love it. And then another one from Brian Stockwell. In the last script meetup video, Ty got a little pushback on Babbage being an L2. Can he talk about that a little? Everything on-chain versus not on-chain. Floor is yours, Ty.
I would say everything being on-chain would imply you have PNGs and you have movies and you have multiple copy, like if I'm a movie producer and I need to create an encrypted copy of a particular movie so that I can sell it to one of my users, if Disney has a 10 gigabyte movie or something, and maybe 5 gigabytes, and they want to have 50 million different people watch it, then how much data is that? And is it economic to put all of those copies of the movie in encrypted form on chain so that it can then be trustlessly taken down? And the answer is no. And also miners are going to prune it. And so what you can do is you can incentivize particular parties to provide the service of storing data that hashes to a certain value. And that's what NanoStore is. It's a way to incentivize people to contract with you and to stake their reputation on claiming that I will make this particular data available for this period of time, and here's the hash of it. And that way you have people who are directly contracting with you, because if you just throw something in a transaction and broadcast it out, like, who signed an agreement to keep that around? Nobody did. Right. So you need to have people you're doing business with, and you need to think about the economic incentives of the system as a whole and whether it's going to work long term.
So it's an interesting question, and I go back and forth on that same concept. If it's a Disney movie, I'm not actually cared about like immutability and all this kind of stuff, right? Because it's like, I don't know, when it becomes unpopular, people will stop using it. But I do like with Canonic, for example, like published a book written by someone who was a sex slave on Epstein's island, and nobody wanted to publish that book. And so the EPUB file was pushed to the blockchain because of its censorship resistance. So what do you think of use cases like that, where it's like, look, the reason I came to a blockchain in the first place is because it's, political or whatever. Do you see like an opportunity? Maybe it is a 10 gigabyte file, but I want it on chain so that it can't just be chopped at the knees the second somebody doesn't like it. What do you think of that?
In order for something to be available widely, there has to be some level of willingness to host it somewhere and route traffic to whoever is hosting it. If you want to put something on chain, I just defer to let's let it compete with everything else, right? Like if someone wants to pay to put something on chain, and if they have a way of making it available and they think the blockchain is going to help them with that, either they are going to waste a lot of money in putting it on chain and they're wrong, or maybe they get some benefit out of that, in which case, more power to them.
For sure. Good answer. I love it. We got about 1 minute left here. So in an open system protocol like Bitcoin, can you even have a hierarchy? I would answer this. Yes, you can have a hierarchy. Certain node, like a node with more proof of work, or like, a company like Tal, for example, their opinion matters more because they're paying more to secure the chain. And then, versus somebody who's whatever. So yes, there are hierarchies. Yeah. There are businesses. Somebody with a lot of business clout also has, a lot more say to the node. So somebody calling Tal and saying, hey, I have 1 billion transactions a month. Can we have a discussion about price? Like, yes, there's a hierarchy there. It's an implied one because of value. Yeah. Here's a question from Moham. Is the BSV on Kucoin Real Bsv? Yes, but I think they use the BCHSV ticker. So FYI. Ty, who deserves a shout out before we close up, or who do you want to say hi to, or any thanks or gratitudes across the BSV universe?
I would say Craig always deserves a shout out. Definitely, there's a lot of developers doing some things. Just I've talked to some people and they're not out in the open as much, but they're quiet and they're working, and they're going to add some real value. So to those people, my message is, build your stuff like it's going to be around in 30 years, because somebody's stuff will be around in 30 years.
Yes. I love it. Ty, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go. We're going to close the show here. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited about what's going on with Project Babbage. Everybody check it out. Is it projectbabbage.com? Is that the best place to check things out?
Yes, check it out on projectbabbage.com.
And we have at Project Babbage as well on Twitter. Ty, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kurt.
So everybody, really, really good to be back. I cannot express how happy I am to be back doing a regular CoinGeek Weekly live stream. I love these shows. I love hosting them with you. I was very happy to do the climb and write stuff, but the daily grind was so much. And then the extreme focus on the trial and the law and all that is a little bit. I mean, it's interesting, but man, was it tiring also. So anyways, I'm very glad to be back. We will be back every Tuesday eventually. So we got the holidays coming up. We're probably going to do a special show here and there, like a end of the year roundup, clip show, that kind of thing. And I think, so I haven't gotten all the confirmation yet. I think we may do like a post-mortem show on the Climb and V Right stuff. We're seeing if we can get people from the inside. We're trying like hell to find counselors and jurors and other people who might be interested in doing like a final wrap-up show on that too. So stay tuned for announcements. But ultimately, the holidays are coming up, and we're going to really get things kicked off on the real schedule back to normal at some point in the first week of January. So everybody, thank you so much. I will see you next week, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here across all CoinGeek social media, all the folks from CoinGeek.com. Everybody, thank you so much. And thank you to my dear wife. I can hear my son crying, which means he has just woken up from his nap, and I need to go before it turns to absolute chaos here at Casa del Wuckert. Everybody, thank you so much. I will see you next week. Goodbye.
Our data is stored in the cloud, our connections and experiences constrained by a few large gatekeepers with unprecedented power. Our activity is analyzed by advertisers to exploit our need for attention, approval, and control. This is the world in which we live. But what if things could be different? What if you could pay for the videos you watch, the messages you send, the music you listen to, directly with Bitcoin? What if your identity, your data, your actions and accountability stayed with you across apps? And what if you only needed one password to log into every service you use? Slowly, as the full power of the Bitcoin protocol is being unleashed, Project Babbage is making these what-ifs into reality. Migrate your app from internet to metanet and join this new world. Build on Babbage at projectbabbage.com.